My role simply here is to introduce Professor Christopher Oludhe. We are in a university now. Are we together? Yes. Yes. He is a meteorologist by profession and an associate professor in the Department of Earth and Climate Sciences and also Institute for Climate Change Adaptation of the University of Nairobi. Professor Oludhe holds a PhD degree in meteorology from the University of Nairobi and has over 35 years of experience in teaching, supervision, and research at the University of Nairobi. His research interests include climate change, vulnerability, impacts, adaptation, and mitigation, as well as renewable energy with emphasis on wind and solar energy resource assessment. Professor Oludhe has been engaged in various activities related to climate change impacts, vulnerability and adaptation studies with organizations such as the IGAD, Climate Prediction Application Center, where he has been engaged in capacity building services on a seasonal climate prediction. So if you are a farmer, you need seasonal climate prediction, isn't it so? Yes. Yeah, for the greater horn of Africa countries. Professor Oludhe is currently a member of the study group on energy, integrated energy services for World Meteorological Organization based in Geneva, Switzerland. So I came to know Professor Oludhe just in the last 1 week.
True.
We've been talking on phone. Now we are introduced because in this partnership as the OAIC, we recognize that we need knowledge. We need to address everything we do with competence. So the Institute for Climate Change Adaptation at the University of Nairobi was chosen by the OAIC International as our partner on this work in the whole continent. And so we are going to work with the university. In fact, we will have some sessions at the university. You know, it's a public university.
Yeah, true.
And you are meant to be there. You know, sometimes we think universities are for younger people.
No. Everybody's.
So we will get there where this knowledge is generated. So thank you so much, Professor Oludhe, for giving us time in the midst of your busy schedule in the last less than a week for you to reschedule and be here. So let's welcome him for this presentation, and after that, certainly we shall have the question and answer session. Professor.
Yeah, thank you very much, Reverend, for that very nice introduction. Mmesikia majina zangu ni Christopher Oludhe. Mimi ni mwalimu katika chuo kikuu cha Nairobi. Nishakuwa huko kwa miaka karibu 35 na bado tunaendelea kufundisha wanafunzi ndio waweze kujenga Kenya vizuri. So now I was given this particular title to share with you. It will be maybe it will be a bit technical, but I believe I'll try to water it down kidogo ndio tuweze kuelewana, si ndio? So I'm going to talk about the state of climate in Kenya, but before that we have to look at the global picture, and then from the global picture we come to the regional and then down to the country level. And we can even go further down to the counties, but we are not going to do that at this particular moment. But here is my outline of what I want to share with you this morning. We want to look at some very important definitions, terminologies, which many times people try to mix them together. So we want to clarify the differences between those terminologies, especially when you're talking about weather, when you're talking about climate, when you're talking about climate variability and climate change. So you have to distinguish those differences. Then I'm going to also take you through quickly about some concepts of really what climate change is, okay? And then from those concepts, we look at the drivers of this giant animal called climate change. We have the anthropogenic component and also the natural component. But which one is playing a bigger role out of these two? So we are going to also have a look at that. And then we look at also, because carbon dioxide gas is a major player in these anthropogenic drivers of climate change, so we want to look at the history of carbon dioxide over a long period of time. How was it behaving, not misbehaving, but behaving over that time? And how is it behaving now, currently? And what are the implications of those kind of behaviors, okay? And then we are now going to look at the linkage between this concentration of the carbon dioxide with the temperatures that you are seeing going up, temperature rise. Is carbon dioxide playing a role in that rise in temperature? And if so, then what can we do? And then we'll also tell you something about the effect, because this carbon dioxide has some effect on our temperature. So there's what we call the greenhouse effect. And we're going to give you some concepts about the greenhouse effect so that you're able to understand when we are talking about now the overall climate of this particular region. And then we'll take you through some of the observations in terms of temperature for the whole globe. How has temperature been behaving over time? And so that you can be able to appreciate these changes in temperature over a longer period of time. Because for you to be able to understand what climate change is, you need a very long period of data sets that cuts across hundreds of years so that you can see those changes as they have been happening. And then we look at some of the potential impacts of those changes in climate. And then look at some of the regional indicators in our region, in your place of where you live. Have you been seeing some of these changes? And if you've been seeing them, then definitely you know things are not the same. So things have been changing. And then we'll now talk about, mostly because we have farmers around, how does climate change impact on agriculture and also livestock? And finally, I'll make some conclusions on that. Okay, so this is just a brief outline of what I want to share with you this morning. I can see a hand up. Ndio hiyo.
Na unajua tuko University ya Nairobi.
Ero.
Kitu ambacho mimi naomba.
Yes.
Badala ya mimi kuhangaika kuandika. Utapata hii kuandika
utapata I mean yeah.
We are going to
hata recording pia inafanyika hapo.
yes.
Saizi nyinyi waja ukishapata mawaidha hapa, wewe pia unaenda kufundisha mtu. Utapata hii presentation.
Let me say something.
Yeah.
When you are writing, write something if you want to ask a question, but don't try to write all this.
No.
Be given
Just
all this.
give me your ears. The most important thing is to give me your ears, understand. Ukiweza kuelewa hata kidogo, a quarter of it, ni vizuri kuliko kutoka bila kabisa. Okay, so now we want to go into those definitions, and here are some of those definitions about what is weather, what is climate variability, and what is climate change. Now, when it comes to weather, it is what we get on a daily basis. Leo kuna joto, leo kuna baridi, kesho kutakuwa na jua, manyunyu ya hapa na pale. That is weather. Okay? That is not climate. But now, when it comes to climate, ni hiyo weather ambao ushachukua for a long period of time, 30 years, umechukua average yake. Sasa average ya hiyo weather ndio inakupatia climate. Lazima iwe muda ambao imepita 30 years and more, ndio itakupatia climate of a region, climate of an area. But otherwise, what we are dealing with today, tomorrow, is just weather. Okay? So there's a difference between weather, and there are weather forecasting, and then there's also climate forecasting. Okay? Climate ni ile ya muda mrefu. Weather ni ya sasa na kesho kutwa. Okay? So climate variability ni ile year to year there are variations. Wakati huu kulikuwa na mvua nyingi, mwaka ujao mvua imepungua, and then mwaka ingine mvua inaongezeka namna hiyo. Sasa hiyo kwenda juu, kwenda chini, kwenda juu, kwenda chini, hiyo ndio climate variability. Okay? So when we are dealing with climate issues, we have to know how varying is our climate in the region. Inageuka namna gani between one year to another. Na hii climate change sasa ni hiyo change ambayo imeshafanyika, ile things that used to happen before are no longer happening now. That's when you see that happening, then that is a change. Otherwise, if whatever you are seeing today, now, was already being seen in the other years, then things have not changed, they are still remaining the same. But the moment you see a certain pattern coming so frequently and spreading over a number of years, 10 years or more, without going back to its original variability, then you are dealing with a change. Hiyo sasa mambo imebadilika, okay? Climate imebadilika. And there are two ways in which that climate can change. There is the first component, which is natural, ile ya kawaida. Kuna hatufanye nini, things will change. Na kuna ile ambayo sasa binadamu ameongezea juu ya natural. Okay? Halafu ikakuwa even bigger. So it's even more. That now becomes so those are the two ways, the natural component and the anthropogenic, ama human. Hii anthropogenic ni scientific name ya kuonyesha ni binadamu ndio amechangia kwa hiyo change. So nataka kuonyesha hii diagram ni kama ni distribution. Na hii distribution iko na hii ya kwanza, you can see there's the dotted one, and the second one is bold. Okay? It's the same distribution. Okay? But the only thing that has changed is it has shifted. Ilikuwa hapo, lakini sasa iko in a new position. Ime shift to. But this shift now, if it doesn't go back, then we are talking about climate change, a permanent climate change. But now see, with this new distribution, the frequencies of occurrences of events have increased. Kama ni joto, itakuwa joto sana. Kama ni mvua, itakuwa mvua nyingi. Okay? Kama tuseme kama hii ni this is temperature, now you are going into hotter temperatures, and you'll have extreme cases, very, very hot under the new climate change. And there's frequencies of occurrences of those events are going to increase. And the severity also will increase. But you can see now those cold events which were there in the previous climate are not there in the new climate. Sasa ile baridi ambayo ilikuwako kitambo, saizi hakuna, ni joto, joto, joto. That is only, you have only shifted the mean. Okay? You have just shifted the mean. You have not shifted the variability. Now, ukiwa na data ya hii, then you can plot that data on a graph. Kwa hii ni mfano. Alafu unaona kuna hiyo variability, kwenda juu chini, kwenda juu chini. Alafu ukichora straight line, inaonyesha vitu zinaenda juu. Kama ni temperature, unaona temperature inapanda juu as you go to future time scales. So hii ni mfano moja ya climate change. Mfano nyingine ni the mean does not change. Iko tu pale pale, the average is still there. Lakini variability ndio ime change. The change has happened with the variability. So the new climate is here, your black line. Na ukiangalia average bado iko pale pale. But look at now the extreme ends, very cold events and very hot events zimeongezeka. The mean has not changed, but the variability has changed. Hiyo pia ni moja ya climate change signals. Alafu the last one ni where both the average has changed and the variability has changed. Hii hapa hii ya chini. So the average, unaona hiyo imeshift huku, alafu the spread out ya hii distribution imekuwa pana sana. Kwa hivyo the frequencies of those extreme events are going to be increased. Alafu also there'll be a fewer cold events. Na hii type of climate change ni worse, kwa sababu imeshikana mara mbili. The mean has changed and the variability has also changed. Na hii ukipigwa na hii, kurudi to start afresh is not very easy. Okay? This kind of changes, and this is what we are experiencing world over, where the variability has changed and the frequencies are also changed. And things are becoming extreme. Okay? Na ndio hiyo. So hiyo ndio concept ya climate change. And what is bringing these things here? Nilisema kuna vitu mbili, natural na anthropogenic. So hizi diagrams mnaona hapa sorry, they are just what can cause climate change. Okay? So what we are seeing here is hii ni dunia. Dunia huwa inazunguka jua. Okay? So it goes around the sun. 1 year takes 365 days. Okay? So as it goes around the sun, it gets its seasons. Okay? Kuna summer, kuna winter, kuna autumn, na kuna spring. Those are part of climate. Na kuna sehemu za dunia ambazo zina experience those winter, summer, autumn, and so on. So this thing has been happening for millions of years. Hii dunia ishakuwa ikizunguka hiyo jua tangu miaka na milele, na bado itaendelea kufanya hivyo. And those are bringing changes in our climate, but they are natural. There's nothing you can do. Alafu kuna wakati sa ile dunia inazunguka jua, kuna wakati iko karibu na jua sana, na kuna wakati mwingine iko mbali sana na jua. So when it's very close to the sun, there's a lot of energy being received from the sun to the earth. So kuna joto nyingi sana, kwa sababu hiyo wakati huo jua iko karibu sana na earth. And then kuna wakati mwingine ambao jua iko very far from the earth. Na wakati huo hakuna sufficient radiation ya ku hit the earth na ku create changes. So hii pia inakuwa inafanyika kila mara, kila wakati. Ishakuwa ikifanyika for millions of years. And it will continue like that. So we'll be experiencing those natural changes in climate. Alafu pia sa ile when the earth is going round on its own axis, it's not very steady. Ina wobble. Inazunguka jua lakini ina wobble. So wakati ina wobble hivyo, pia hiyo wobbling inaleta changes in our climate. Ina pepeta ikienda around. Haiko steady sana lakini inajaribu. Okay? So, inatetemeka. Inayumba. Hiyo kuyumba pia inaleta changes in our climate. Na pia hiyo tilting, unajua wakati mwingine southern hemisphere iko karibu na jua na northern hemisphere iko mbali na jua. Sasa wale wako mbali na jua, they don't get enough solar radiation. So changes in climate occurs there. Wale wako karibu na jua sana, their summer is when they get a lot of radiation. Those are natural. Na hizi ndio ni scientific names of those hizo kuyumba na kuzunguka mviringo ambao sio kamili. Okay? So those are alafu kuna ingine volcanic eruption. Okay? Wakati mlima imelipuka, itatoa a lot of dust into the atmosphere. Na ikitoa this kind of dust, inaziba radiation from the sun kupita through ndio ifike kwa earth, so that the earth can receive radiation. So wakati huu pia hizi vitu zinafanyikaga naturally, hizi volcanic eruptions, and there are certain big volcanic eruptions ambazo zishafanyika, na scientists waligundua moja ikifanyika kubwa sana, dunia temperature ya dunia inarudi chini kwa sababu ya hizi dust. Jua hawezi pitisha through those particular dust. So hizi ambayo nimeeleza ni just natural ways of our climate changing. So nyingine sasa ndio hii anthropogenic, sisi binadamu. Tuko na a lot of factories, industries and so on, and you can see on top there, they're throwing out smoke. And those smoke contains the carbon dioxide that I was talking about, and other gases. Na tutakuelezea how that comes in. So this is binadamu. How binadamu is just messing up the environment. Okay? We are having those industries emitting a lot of smoke, dust, carbon particles, and so on. And then forest fires everywhere, and then cutting down those trees left, right, and center. And you can see your burning of those tree, maybe to change this from tree plantation to just agricultural field. Alafu, the kind of deforestation that is happening, and then charcoal gathering, and so on, and then motor vehicle. So all these are part and parcel of human interference with our climate. And it has been seen through a recorded data set that carbon dioxide in the last so many years has been below a certain level for a long time. But over the last 50 years, it has just shot up crazily. Imeenda juu, ndio unaona hii graph imeenda juu sana, na kitambo ilikuwa naturally ilikuwa na oscillate to normal, and it was in harmony with everything that is going on. But once the humans came in, the thing just shot up. And so is methane. Methane pia ni another gas ambayo tunaita greenhouse gas. Pia for a long time it's been below a certain level, but over the recent past it just went up. And these are part and parcel of our interference with the climate. So this graph here just shows us, we are taking carbon dioxide as an example, that over 600 years, carbon dioxide had been below that particular level for a very long time. 680 years is not a short time. But just look at from 1950. 1950s, most of us were born then. It just went up because of human activities, okay? The activities that we have just seen previously. And now scientists have tried to mirror this together with temperature rise, because they have been taking observations of temperature globally. And you can see this is the carbon dioxide graph since the 1880 to 2017. The yellow is the graph for the carbon dioxide in parts per million. Now the red curve you're seeing here, your current temperature. And you can see that as the carbon dioxide goes up, the temperatures are also going up. So the more we put on carbon dioxide in the atmosphere, the more the temperatures are going to go up. And when the temperatures go up, there are repercussions for that as you go into the future. So the best way is to find a way of bringing this carbon dioxide curve chini. Okay? Ukileta chini, temperature pia itakuja chini. So this is a concept of your carbon dioxide, the greenhouse effect. So the greenhouse effect here is basically our energy comes from the sun, and that energy, it penetrates through the atmosphere, and then in the atmosphere, it meets gases, those greenhouse gases. But somehow, some radiation will penetrate through and hit the land and oceans, okay, as shown here. But at night, the earth also must radiate. So whatever you receive, you also give. So the earth gives, but it's not able to give in the shorter wave. It gives in the what we call the infrared or long wave radiation. So that long wave radiation haina nguvu sana ya kutoka nje ya atmosphere completely. So what happens is that in the atmosphere here, there are gases. And those gases are able to trap that infrared radiation. Ina absorb your gas. Halafu ikisha absorb, inarudisha tena chini to be reabsorbed by the earth, land, and oceans. Okay? So as this thing continues, the temperatures go up. Now to understand this issue of the atmosphere and the real greenhouse, mshaona hii nyumba ya glass, the mnajua greenhouse ndio? Imetengenezwa na glass ama imetengenezwa na polythene. It allows shortwave radiation to sunlight kuingia ndani, but this glass will refuse the long wave radiation to get out. So a lot of it will remain inside this house. So in the end, inside the house will be much warmer than outside this house. Na hiyo ndio effect ambayo inafanyika kwa atmosphere. Okay? And here is those gases, and you can see those gases. Hii radiation ya long wave ikitaka kutoka, inakuwa trapped hapo, inarudi chini. So the circle continues. Circle continues. And as the circle continues, the more you increase these greenhouse gases, the more warming will happen. So now, where are these problems coming from? This global map shows you the emissions ya carbon dioxide globally. Hii ni kitambo kidogo, lakini saizi ukipata the new one, you'll find things have changed. These circles have even grown bigger. Okay? And you can see Europe inatoa carbon dioxide nyingi sana. US, America, nyingi. Asia, including China, a lot. Look at Africa and South America, kidogo. But when it comes to the impacts, sisi ndio tunaumia sana. Yet we are not emitting as these guys. Okay? So kuna shida. These guys hawataki kusema ati hao ndio wana-emit, but they want us to also play a role in terms of what they have already, the mess that they have already covered. So this is a very interesting way of looking at the emissions in terms of global warming. So for us to be able to know whether temperatures are going up and things are changing, we need data sets. Okay, true data set ambao naweka instrument, measures for you those temperatures, whether on the ground, whether up. So there are some ways in which the global, these are some of the programs globally that are able to give us data on temperatures. So we have satellite, you have heard of satellites. They are orbiting the Earth from all over. There are those that are used by military. There are those that are used by climate scientists and so on. So, but all this information that is gathered out there in the skies is brought back to be analyzed by the climate centers here on Earth. So they relay that information and bring it for processing, and they're able now to know exactly what is happening wherever in the globe. And here are those particular instruments. We have automatic weather stations that actually are able to measure wind speed, temperature, rainfall, and all that. There are also balloons that go up in the sky, and able to give us data set. We also have instruments that are floating in the oceans. And those are also measuring ocean temperatures. They are also measuring wind and so on. And even the passenger aircrafts, as they move to en route wherever their destination is, they are able to bring back that data set en route, and that data set is processed. So with all these data sets from these different instruments, we are able now to know that things are not the same again. So globally, these are from direct temperature measurements. You can see that in US, the black line is what has been happening on average. So temperatures have gone up in Europe, in Asia, in Africa, and also in South America. So actually temperatures are going up. And even if you just look at the globe in its entirety, that is, you have taken the water sources, the land sources, and you average them, you'll still see that it has gone up. If you look at land alone, temperatures have gone up. And if you look at the oceans themselves, things have gone up. Now here, I have this clip which will show you how temperature, from those instruments, how temperature have been changing in a five-year term from 1880 to 2022. Okay, there you are. Although we are not on slide mode, but you can be able to see. And these are the dates, okay? So just look at the northern hemisphere. Sorry, yeah. Okay, can you play? Okay, there we are. It's playing. Yeah, very good, thank you very much. So you can see, these are the temperature five-year from 1880 to 2022. And you can see the red means there's warming, the blue means there's cooling. But now just look at in the recent past. The northern hemisphere, this is now between 2018 and 2022. The northern hemisphere is red. It meant warmer than normal. And some places as well here. And you know, up here we have permafrost and ice and glaciers. Those ones are now melting and emptying to the seas and making the sea level to rise. So we are not out of the hook yet, because if this thing continues like that, all the oceans and the small island states will disappear. Completely, they'll be submerged. So it's a global problem, and we need answers to that. So the next graph is just telling us, you can see that in the last 10 or so years, it's been much warmer. And this is actual measurements from instruments that I showed you. Before, the temperatures were below average. For a long time, you can see, from 1880, the blue, they were below average, globally. But from the 1950s, things just started going haywire. And now, you can see those colors. Those colors meaning that it's very red, it's very hot, it's very warm. And the trend, if you project this, but it ended June. And it's not a good indication unless something is done urgently. So here is a finding from the IPCC report, fifth assessment report. Of course, we have a sixth assessment report. It just shows that in the mountains, there are glaciers, and those glacier volumes are going down. It means the earth has warmed, and the glaciers are melting, and now they are flowing down to the river. Very soon, there'll be no glaciers in our highest mountains. If you look at air temperature, inaenda juu. If you look at water vapor, because of the heat, pia water vapor inaongezeka, okay? It's rising. Air temperature over land also is going up. Snow cover is going down, whereas the sea level because of the melting sea level in Ndaju. Now, what are the impacts of those changes? Okay. So those changes, if you have any change in temperature or any change in rainfall or precipitation or any change in sea level rise, then it will impact on all these sectors, whether it is health, whether it's in agriculture, whether you're in forestry, like what our CS mentioned, whether you're dealing with water resources, whether you're in the coastal areas, or looking at species, different types of species, be it birds, be it whatever, name it. They are going to disappear because of those changes. So here is just what has been observed globally. Of course, we have given you some highlights of the impacts. So these are some of the effects in terms of global. Sea level is now going up. Arctic ice, uko juu, northern hemisphere, is melting. Glaciers and permafrosts also are doing the same. And if you look at sea surface temperatures, they are going up. And also large lakes, they are also warming. And in terms of crops, they are withering because of frequent droughts. And if you look at those droughts, they are now becoming more and more extreme. And even the ecosystem is changing. And when the ecosystem changes, a lot of things also change. And of course, there's going to be in future more heat waves going to happen because of the increase in temperature, okay? So here is what, coming back home, this is what is happening in many places. A number of rivers in your area are either drying or they're becoming seasonal. Those permanent rivers, they're no longer there as permanent, but they are seasonal. Kuna wakati moja maji imejaa kwa hiyo river, kuna wakati mwingine hakuna maji, but now as you go into the future, the rivers are going to dry up. And if you look at, this is Mount Kilimanjaro. Before it had a lot of snow, but currently now, if you fly over Mount Kilimanjaro, hakuna ice, kidogo sana, including Mount Kenya. And some of these lakes, like Lake Nakuru, there were times when it was shrinking, but again now, I'm told Lake Baringo and so on, they are starting to expand. I don't know if there are people from Baringo here. Maybe they can tell us about Lake Baringo. It must be either shrinking or expanding. But this is normally what happens when you have changes in climate. So here are some of just those impacts. We'll have more and more flooding. There'll be a lot of droughts going to happen. And there'll be a lot of water shortage that accompanies, of course, this drought. And of course, if you're in Europe and elsewhere, heat waves are going to be very frequent. And here are just some of the examples, graphical examples of temperatures. Okay, this is in Marsabit. Temperatures are actually going up. Of course, you can see the variability, but the general trend is that they're going up. The temperatures, minimum temperatures, this is maximum temperatures, they're going up. Minimum temperatures in the same area are going up. But when it comes to rainfall, it's going down. The rainfall is going down. And if you use some statistical analysis, you can now look at which years did you have more rainfall, which years did you have less rainfall over this particular area. And you can see those bars. The taller it is, the more rain was there during that particular time. The shorter it is, the less the rain. And the more it crosses that line, it means drought. So you can see the number of droughts that have been occurring in that particular station or area. So from data set, you can analyze and get true picture of what is happening, okay? So here is some of the impacts that when we are looking at agriculture now, because majority of us are farmers, we know that agriculture really is the mainstay or the backbone of our economy in Africa, and it cuts across the majority of livelihoods because people depend so much on agriculture. And therefore, with that kind of dependency, we are very vulnerable, okay? So Africa actually is a vulnerable hotspot. And therefore, with those changes that we've just talked about, climate change, then it's going to bring a lot of devastation in terms of crop production and the yields and so on. And of course, agriculture being one that depends a lot on rainfall, then what you'll end up with is reduced crop productivity, and with that heat which is associated with the rising temperature and also the drought stress, it may bring in issues of pests as well, and also diseases. So these are things that we have to really be keen about if we want to grow more and more food from the declining rainfall. So this declining agricultural productivity with also loss of crops are some of the most impacts, the adverse impacts of climate change is just around those issues of crop failure. So again, these are just some ideas about the impacts of climate change in agriculture, because we have now seen that temperatures are going to rise, and of course the rainfalls is changing, the patterns of rainfall is changing. In fact, in many places, the season starts either early and ends early, or starts late and ends early. And those kind of changes will really hit the farmers hard. And of course, there'll be more extreme events that are going to happen. And this will definitely have impact on our yields and also on our water supply for irrigation, including the prevalences of pests that will even cause more damage to our crops. So again, these are just ideas that can enhance your knowledge in terms of impacts of climate change when it comes to extreme temperatures, when you're looking at rainfall changes that leads to flooding, and of course, flooding also will bring about losses in topsoil, the fertility and so on. With increased drought, of course, you'll not have sufficient water to be able to grow your crops. And sea level changes, those who are in the coastal areas, of course, will end up with a loss in land that is supposed to be for agricultural activities. So here are some of the stresses for water resources, because in agriculture you need water. So if climate can bring problems in the water resources, then obviously it will also create problems in the agriculture sector. So these again are just some of the ideas that can help you think through in terms of the impacts. So let's look at some of the havocs that climate change has caused in this part of our world. Some of these pictures, you may have seen them somewhere, but this is when you have very extreme rainfall events. Things like El Nino. If you have had El Nino, this was one of the El Nino events that occurred in 1997-98. And you can see this is a street in Uganda, okay? And it's totally submerged completely. And this is in Budalangi, here in Kenya. Totally submerged. And this is one of those refugee camps. And you can see, and it impacts on livelihood, human livelihood, because you can't cook in such an environment. Diseases are going to just be rampant. Of course, the toilets have been turned upside down and everything, and the kind of impacts that come after this is terrible. And you can see this is Mombasa Road, completely cut off. So infrastructure is also, and this is in the coastal areas. So when you have extreme, and these events are going to occur repeatedly as you go into the future. And then now, when it comes to drought, issues of pastoralism, you can see. And these are some of the livelihoods of these pastoralists. So when a drought becomes more severe and it runs for a longer period of time, the losses that you end up with is immense. And some of these is their entire livelihood, those cattle that have just perished. It's the entire livelihood of those people. And here is a situation where you can't even get the skin out of some of these dead cows. And this again was the 2000 drought, the La Nina, okay? Whenever you have El Nino, the next thing you're going to have is La Nina. Floods, droughts. Like this year, we're going to have El Nino. El Nino is coming. And that's one part of the early warning system that the National Met Services are supposed to give so that you get prepared in good time. Then after El Nino, this is something that should not happen again in future. So we have to think through what can we do to help these communities to be able to survive together with their cattle. So as we go into the future, the projection, using the data that we talked about, they are able to now get into models, okay, to see what will happen into the future. And these are now temperatures in Europe, in North America, in Africa. They are projected to go up. So nothing is going to go down. Temperatures are not going to go down, okay? So you have to start planning as you go into the future. And this is just one of the projections, the impacts of some of those projected temperature rise. If you have an average of just 1 degree Celsius change, then it will impact on the food, it will impact on water, it will impact on ecosystem, and some of those extreme events are also going to. So the moment you cross a certain threshold, 4 degrees Celsius into the future, then things may go worse. The kind of risks that people will face in the future will be more worse than what we're experiencing today. So what are we able to do before we get to those kind of extremes? And here are just some of the useful documents, especially for the Kenyans, which one can look through and see what are these documents telling us of how we can prepare ourselves with the changes in climate, okay? There is the National Climate Change Response Strategy of 2010, the Climate Change Act, we have the NDCs, we have the NAP, and also the others, which you can just download. And here are just 1 or 2 actions that perhaps can help us as we move forward. Because of the changing rainfall patterns and seasonal, we can start thinking of how we can get these drought-tolerant crops and those that can grow very fast, so that if the rainfall is just about 1 month or 2 months, you're able to get your yield. And then whatever little water that falls from the sky, are we able to capture that and store it somewhere, water harvesting? Let's look at some of those technologies that can help us store that water to take us through a dry period. What about conservation, soil and water conservation and things like that? We have to think through some of these techniques that can help us improve our soil conditions. And then there is the climate smart agriculture technologies that we can start thinking through also. And let's not forget the indigenous knowledge. Many of us here have gone through the worst, but somehow you survived up to today. How did you survive? So let's look at those ways in which you and your community were able to survive through those worst droughts and worst floods, so that you use that knowledge to be able to marry together with the scientific knowledge and make the community live better. And of course, the issue of early warning, preparedness. You have to strengthen those ones so that you are given an alert in good time, okay? And we have to build capacity as well, so that those who are coming behind us can be able to know exactly what is also happening. So just to conclude, I have a few maps of, this is just the seasonal projection of what will happen in June, July, August, all the way to September for the Greater Horn of Africa. This is a rainfall prediction. Where you're seeing green, those are the areas that will have above normal rainfall. Where you're seeing gray, those are areas that are just going to remain dry. And where you're having yellow is almost, the rainfall is almost going to be normal in those particular areas. And this is for the greater Horn of Africa, but you can come down to Kenya, and they also issue the forecast for the June, July, all the way to August. This is what is normally known, the climatology, that during this particular season, the western part gets rainfall quite a bit, and also a little bit of the coastal areas. But much of the country is generally dry. So if you're thinking of farming during this particular season, keep it aside, forget. Wait for the short rains, which is coming with El Nino, okay? And this is their forecast. This is the climatology, and this is their forecast. And their forecast just shows that this yellow here will just be generally normal to below. And this other area here will receive slightly better rains. Whereas this purple here will remain cold generally. This is a cold season. This is our winter. And of course, the coastal area will also have some little bit of rain. So to conclude, I think we know about climate change impacts. So these impacts can actually undo whatever gains that you have done over time, whether you're in water sector, whether you're in agriculture, or even whichever, whatever good you have done there, when you have a big impact, everything will just collapse. So we need to start thinking of how we can live with what is happening, the variability that we are seeing, the highs and lows and highs. If we are able to live with those highs and lows, we'll adjust in a way that if those highs are going to increase in frequency, we'll be able to just bounce back. And so thank you very much, and that's the end of my talk.